Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Game Over here. The Ottawa Senators come out with a 4-0 win over the Utah Hockey Club, the first ever game between the two squads. And I'm not going to lie, it was a little bit of a tough game overall, but nice to meet everyone here on the live stream and everything like that. I'm joined by Nick Robinson here for his second game. And Nick, welcome. It's our first show together. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, looking forward to it. And always nice to talk after a win, especially when you stay up a bit late to watch, as most people in Ottawa did.
For sure, yeah. And let's be honest here. This was sort of a tough game to watch, at least as a fan, right? Shots were 31 to 23 for Utah. It started out terrible. I think the shots were 7-0 for the home team, and Ottawa sort of they picked up the pace a little bit sort of midway through the first period, and then eventually those four goals in a matter of 8 minutes was the difference of this game. And I you know what? They weren't the best defensively, but I think they did a good job at least keeping the high danger chances outside of the crease for the most part. But also, the story of the game has to be Anton Forsberg here.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in that first period, he really kept them in it. That first 10 minutes, I think, they very could have easily been behind a couple of goals. I think last year, in this kind of a game, they would have definitely been behind a couple of goals in those first 10 minutes. But, you see the reward with this team when they do get good goaltending. They typically can find a way to win. They did tonight. Like you said, it wasn't their best effort, but the offense did enough and they just really did a decent job of holding the hockey club out for the better part of that game.
And where are you at with Anton Forsberg here, right? Because today, basically for me at least on the West Coast here, I woke up and around, I think it was around 10 a.m. my time, I found out that Anton Forsberg was going to be the starter. And we saw that he actually came out with a new mask, it looked like. I can't really remember what it was like before, but this one seems to just be covered like completely by the Senators logo, and it looks pretty damn good, I'm not gonna lie. Um, like, is there something to be said about that? Because, the past couple of years, Anton Forsberg hasn't been the best goaltender like he was in 2022 when he had, I think, a 917 save percentage in around 40 games. Is that something where maybe he's just switching things up a little bit?
Yeah, maybe new mask, new Forsberg. I haven't been totally thrilled with the games he'd had prior to this one. I think even the one on Tampa Bay against Tampa Bay on Saturday, I wasn't thrilled with a couple of the goals he allowed in there. But tonight he really looked on it from the drop of the puck. I think Utah had a chance like 40 seconds in. I think Gunther or something had a shot from the slot 40 seconds in, and he stood firm and then had all types of chances right in front of him in that early going. But he did really well to battle tonight, and that's exactly what you need from Anton Forsberg. What you need from your backup goaltender. You just need to them to go out there and really battle, and he did exactly that.
And the thing is I was a little bit scared about this road trip. As we all know, the Sens are pretty good at home. They've always had a good home record. They always put up, like, I would say 95% of the time, they put up a good showing for their fans. Like, they put in a good effort. They score some goals and everything. They rarely get shut out on home ice, and that's all good. I think last year they were over 500 at home. On the road, however, this team was awful last year. I think they had one game where they won on the West outside of the Eastern time zone, right? That's not good. You're not going to make the playoffs if that happens. You know what? This is the first game. You will take it no matter what, despite this, performance not being great for the Sens. You know what? At the end of the day, you will take it, right?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it goes back, and I don't want to keep going back to the goaltending, but there was that stat from last year where they were scored on in the first two shots of the game, more than 20 times last year, and particularly when you're on the road and you start from behind right off the get-go, you're not going to win a lot of hockey games. But, tonight was just an example. If you get that sort of solidity early on, it gives you really something to build off of, which is exactly what the forwards did in the later part of that second period, all started by but a really nice goal from Batherson or Norris to Batherson, excuse me. And then, just right after that, it looks like the team got a lot of confidence going. I wasn't particularly thrilled with the second period. But the third, I thought they did a really good job of keeping Utah out. So, I mean, as far as like a road performance goes from the Senators, maybe you don't want to have to rely on your goalie so much every time you're on the road. But I for the better part, I would say it's a solid away effort for the Senators team and a good way to start the road trip for sure.
Yeah, the shots were 14-5 in the second period, 10-9 actually in the first for Utah. We thought it would be way worse than that. And Ottawa actually outshot Utah 9-7 in the third. Like you said, putting up a pretty decent performance there. And what can you say about Drake Batherson? This guy got his fourth goal of the season so far. I know he is 26, right? So you would expect like this is what he is at the end of the day. However, Drake Batherson has been a late bloomer a lot of his life, actually. He was drafted at 19 years of age in 2017, so he got passed over a year. And I believe in his actual draft year, he only played 8 games or something like that in the QMJHL, which, in all due respect, is not the greatest league for at least high-end talent, maybe. Don't know if that's a little bit of a hot take, but at least in the recent years, there hasn't been as much talent coming out of the queue as there was, with the Sidney Crosby and the Nate McKinnon years and everything like that. Drake Batherson, he just looks complete out there, right? Like in past years, he's had so-so defensive performances, and it looks like, he obviously has the talent, but sometimes maybe the effort isn't there 100% of the time, or he's not using his body, or he's not shooting the puck enough. What do you see in this 26-year-old version of Drake Batherson? Because I actually can't even believe he's 26 at this point. Um, in my mind, I still kind of see him as this sort of younger prospect, 22, but he's fully grown, man.
Yeah, for sure. Drake Batherson, like you sort of alluded to, he's getting closer to being what he is at this point as an NHL player. You sort of know what to expect. You're always going to get really solid offensive plays. He's always had really great offensive instincts. Defensively can really be suspect at times, but yeah, that's been one of the things I was hoping Travis Green and this new coaching staff were going to get through. We're seeing it with other players. Like there's a bit, I think, Brady Tkachuk made a really good defensive play in the third, boxing out Valimaki. Stutzla's looked a bit better defensively. So I'm hoping they start to have that sort of same effect on Drake Batherson because, I don't need Drake Batherson out competing for the Selke every year, but, he's been a very below par defensive player for the better part of his NHL career. But at least offensively, it looks so far like, Drake Batherson seems like he's back in that pre-Aaron Dell injury form when he was an all-star in 21-22. Um, it was the year after the DeBrincat year that he took a bit of a step back and looked like he was still dealing with the effects of that. But towards the end of last year and especially to start this one, he looks really good. He looks really confident. He's burying his chances, and it's exactly what you want to see from Drake Batherson. So, if you can get that kind of scoring from him, continue this kind of production, yeah, it makes the Senators so much better. And I think having Josh Norris back, having that connection that the two of them have and have had since the AHL days in Belleville, you can see it really benefiting both players.
Yeah, for sure. I think they really took their time with those two players, and you're seeing the maximum capabilities they're able to reach in their NHL careers here. I want to touch a little bit on Utah, because it's the first game that they played in the Delta Center, I believe is what it's called, in entirety in the entire NHL's history for the Ottawa Senators. What did you think of like the performance of Utah, but also the sort of the setup? Because it's the first time, at least myself, I've seen it like to its full capacity. I know I've seen like highlights and everything like that, and goals. And I know apparently it's a little bit of a smaller arena, but what did you think of the setup overall and the entire landscape of the Delta Center?
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. The big, really still black backdrop behind one of the goals is sort of interesting, but weird to see in an NHL arena. But overall, seems like it's a pretty good atmosphere. And as a team, I think Utah's like a good measuring stick for the Senators because they're sort of in the same spot, the two of them, where they're, both been out of the playoffs for a little while, really trying to get back in now, trying to take that next step. So, to go in there, to a part of the country in the United States that the Senators don't traditionally perform very well, and something we're going to touch on. Overall, I think you'll gladly enjoy the spectacle of being the first Canadian team to play there. But, just take the 2 points and get the hell out of there.
Yeah, Utah, I think, played a pretty interesting game where last year, like, of course, this is the Arizona Coyotes we're talking about, right? This is still the same team, basically. I didn't remember seeing them being that fast and that skilled. It looked like they were really feeding off of the crowd tonight. Although I would say Utah, like their crowd, of course they were out of it very early on, but maybe not as loud as I would have thought. However, it is a Tuesday night and everything, and they're playing Ottawa, right? What do they know about the Ottawa Senators? They even spelled the name wrong outside of the arena. Shout out Claire Hanna for that picture over there. But before we head into the second segment, I just want to talk about Hyperdrive Hockey here, which is the flagship show of all the Game Over networks on the Game Over Network channel. It is all things hockey across all the various leagues in multiple countries, whether it be here in Canada, the US, over in Germany, Australia, all those players over there in Europe. And whatever it is, Max and Daphne and Kev have got you covered for all of your hockey news with a steady dose of fun and fan engagement. You can find Hyperdrive Hockey on all the Game Over Network channels across YouTube and Apple Podcasts and everything like that, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts on Hyperdrive Hockey. And you can also look at it on the GameOverNetwork.com. That transitions me into our second point of the day, which is the Ottawa Senators on the road. The Ottawa Senators on the road. Specifically, I feel like in this geographical landscape, in the altitude, before they would have to play Colorado, and I know they always suck against Colorado. And whether it just be Colorado being good, or it's the altitude, or it could be both, the Ottawa Senators, it's basically a scheduled loss into the schedule whenever they head into that area of the US. And Calgary and, Edmonton in that same sort of time zone, they're able to scrape out some wins here and there. But in this part of the US, for some reason, they always just they find a way to lose. And this is a good start. This is a good start, and maybe it's a good thing they got the Utah game out of the way, because maybe if you head into Vegas or Colorado, there's a lot of history there, which I'm thinking about it. I don't even know the last time they won in those arenas, especially Colorado. I know Vegas, they won back in 2018, but Colorado, it's been a while. So you get the win out of the way in Utah. And plus, it's maybe it wasn't your best performance, but it's still a 4-0 win. It looks good on the schedule. And that's something you can build off of because you have two more games on this road trip.
Yeah, absolutely. I think both games last year against Vegas and Colorado. I remember the Colorado game for sure, close to Christmas, and I think it was 6-4 was the final score there, and that was like one of the classic games of last year. Like last season feels like such a fever dream. The amount of times they would play actually pretty okay, and just couldn't buy a save. I think that was definitely the case in Colorado last year. I think it was pretty similar in Vegas too. Lost like 6-3 or something like that. But hopefully we'll see what the status is with Linus Olmark. Because if he can come in for one of those games at least, I think, you get a pretty decent outlook going into that. Um, Either that or you're going to need Forsberg to play a hell of a lot, similar to the way he did tonight.
Do you go? Here's the thing though, right? They play Vegas on Friday, so they have 2 days off now. Let's say this lingering injury is still going on with Linus Ullmark, because it looked like he was going to start like against Tampa, right? We thought so, and then eventually just didn't happen. And it's like he's on the road trip here, right? It looks like he's going to be starting, and especially against Utah, who's they had a 4-1-1 record so far this year. Um, do you go back with Forsberg? Like, is that a decent question to ask you against Vegas on Friday night at 6 p.m. Eastern? So it's a little bit of a weird start. But do you go back with Forsberg because he had a shutout tonight, right? Like,
If Olmark's healthy, I think you go with Olmark.
go with him.
Olmark,
Okay.
he's your starting goalie,
Mhm.
and he is your guy. So I think you go with Olmark. If Olmark's healthy, you go with him. But if he's not, of course, I think, obviously Forsberg is there and ready to go. But if Olmark's healthy, that's the guy you went out and you paid the draft picks for, you're giving the big money to. So, respect to Anton Forsberg, but if you're just basing off history, I'm not too certain he's going to come out with another shutout next game, despite the fact that he played really well tonight. But if Olmark is healthy, like I'd for sure go Olmark personally.
Okay. Yeah, no, like I would as well, but it is an interesting conversation because I don't think we're just used to, at least in the last year and a half, seeing Anton Forsberg put up these great performances like this. Um, I know he had a winning record last year, but I don't remember him having a shutout specifically. And that's to say about what the goaltending was like last year. So
It all kind of
that's
just blends together last year, really.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Like I think they both had an 890 save percentage at best,
yeah,
and it's just good. Like I know Forsberg, he started off rough so far this year, and that LA game was just terrible
a
overall
train
for
wreck.
both. Yeah, for both goalies. New Jersey, he put up a good performance. Tampa Bay was so. Like I think he made the saves when he needed to, and that's the key, right? You could put up an 850 save percentage, but if you make the saves at the right times, then you will get a pass from the fan base, I think, for the most part. I think the Ottawa Senators fan base, like, they're pretty smart overall. I think in the, we're sort of the off-season winners for the past couple of summers and stuff. And I think it was
Well,
good
they
that,
were quiet this offseason. To
yeah,
our credit, we've been very
yeah.
quiet.
I think we sort of learned our lesson, right? Like last year, I had the Sens. I had to be bold somewhat. I had the Sens being second in the Atlantic, which is like ridiculous saying like I think they were seventh in the Atlantic last year. So it ended up just being the complete opposite. But I mean, like Anton Forsberg, I'm not sure what his save percentage is right now, but like it's been a mix of everything so far this year, and I think he just deserves some credit here. I don't want to just like throw that away, and I want to give him his flowers while he has a good game because the fan base was on him this past week, and there was a lot of eyes on him, right? And here he is putting him a good performance.
Yeah, and the team in front of him wasn't so bad tonight either. It always helped. Despite the fact that it wasn't their best game. If they play defensively at times like they did tonight against Colorado and Vegas, they should do fine. I think. I would say one thing. 6 games in, I think they've played 6 good first periods. If you go and look at all the games so far. So that'll be key going into these two road games left on this trip, especially against two teams that we all sort of figure are going to be in and around the Stanley Cup picture come the spring.
I mean, I would say like 5.5 good periods because that first 10 minutes of the game, I genuinely like had some PTSD when it comes to
Fair.
cheering for the Sens because like they've had some really bad performances on the road, specifically in this area before. Um, but let's say, like they got 2 more games left. They got Vegas on Friday night, sort of 6 p.m. Eastern, at least 3 p.m. local, which is odd. I don't know if there's a holiday that day. I don't think so for the US, but then they got Colorado on Sunday to end it off. Now Colorado, Spain, they picked it up recently. Vegas has been pretty good. I think you have to be happy if you come out with one win out of those two and you end the road trip 2-1. But like what do the Sens have to do? Let's start off with Vegas, right? What do the Sens have to do to get into Vegas and come out with a win there because they got 2 days off here. They got some time to prep.
Yeah, Vegas is great. They've got, great decor, really big, really mobile. And they've got a lot of offensive talent. I think, shutting down Jack Eichel is going to be key in that game. And I think just if you're the Senators, you're just looking for more of the same. Because I've honestly, unlike a lot of people I've seen online in parts to start the season, I've actually quite liked this team for the most part at even strength. And, just a couple of the weird results they've had. I think the special teams have just been an issue in a couple of games. But, you see in games like tonight or on Saturday against Tampa, when their power play's going and they can just play decently and keep their head above water at 5v5, this is a pretty solid squad. So, I mean, whether it's Vegas or Colorado, both those teams have big guns, big players. But the Sens have shown a knack to be pretty decent at 5v5, and that's not against any bad teams either. They've played Florida already. They've played Tampa. They,
Montreal,
you
but that
know,
was the worst game.
yeah, exactly, right. It's a bit strange. Like LA is a good team too. Like let's not, shortchange them at all. This team's been playing some decent opposition to start, and they've looked pretty comfortable so far. These two upcoming games away from home are going to be probably their biggest test yet, but if they really just keep chugging along as they have been, I don't see any reason for them to get blown out in either of those two games, which is something we probably would have expected last year. But I'm expecting them
Yeah.
to, at least put up a decent fight in these games.
I think it's nice to see, like, I think the team's a little bit more well-rounded compared to years past. I mean, I know he was in the lineup tonight, but David Perron just brings that leadership factor. And I think the thing that I think that the Sens have lacked a little bit so far in the past years is having depth players who literally just go out there and be a good two-way presence, and you can play them like 13, 14 minutes on the ice every night, right? And I don't mean to harp on players like Parker Kelly or Mark Kastelic, because I think they were good soldiers for us and they gave it their all on the ice. But for the most part, like Parker Kelly, maybe he wouldn't have hurt you defensively for the most part, but he wasn't scoring. He wasn't scoring. I think the most amount of goals he had in a year was 7, maybe, or 10, something like that. And at best, he was like a fourth liner. And you had him playing like towards the end of the year, like 13, 14 minutes. And yes, he could play it, but I don't think we had any like better option in the bottom six. So you replace a guy like Parker Kelly with let's say David Perron, right? And then you throw in Noah Gregor there, right? Noah Gregor, I think, just adds a little bit of an element of speed, and you can kill penalties. And I don't think they're relying on Noah Gregor to be like a third line player at this point. I know he's had to step in recently just because of the injuries, but going forward, I think if Noah Gregor's on your fourth line, then you're happy with that. But I think he has a little bit more offensive flair than a guy like Parker Kelly. A guy like Mark Kastelic, I mean, he's had a good season with Boston, for whatever reason so far. I think he's like a point per game. So he's fitting in very well there, but I don't think it was going to work out here. And I think that players like Zach McEwen and Adam Gaudette and Nick Cousins, I want to shout out to, because that's a quality fourth liner who can step into a third line role if you need to. Those bottom six players are doing their job. And it's not just the Tim Stutzles and the Brady Kachucks and the Claude Giroux putting in the fight and putting in the consistent effort for the Ottawa Senators. It's all 12 players. And though they weren't the best defensively tonight, I think there's just like they're more calm and they don't let their emotions get to them like they have in years past. They just look a little bit more put together.
Yeah, absolutely. That was sort of the MO, I think, from Steve Stais from day one of the offseason. Just wanted to put together a bit more well-rounded of a team, a bit more streetwise Ottawa Senators than they have been in the past. Again, it's going to be a big test going into these next two games, but if they just continue to keep playing the way they're playing and just develop a bit of consistency about them, really no reason why they can't come out of those two games with, say, 2 points at least.
Now, these next two games, is there one player that you would like to see maybe step it up a little bit? We've had a decent sample size so far this year with 6 games. The Ottawa Senators improving to a record of 4-2. Is there anyone on the Sens side that you would like to see, step it up a little bit, whether it be the offense or the defense or goaltending?
I'd like to see Michael Amadio get one. Just he's been really
Mhm.
solid. I've really liked his play so far. I've liked a lot of what he's brought defensively. He seems really solid, but I'd like to see him get a goal just for his own sake. I think a bit of confidence could do him some good. Aside from that, maybe Shane Pinto just get going a bit more offensively too. Although again, I've still generally really liked his play and think he's done a really good job playing in more of a shutdown role this year, which is something again that they desperately needed coming into this year.
Yeah, Michael Amadio's like another one of those guys. We kind of know what Pinto at least is right now, right? He's going to be 24 soon. So he's still got a little bit of time to grow and everything like that. But Amadio has been a nice, like, I know he hasn't scored yet. I think he picked up an assist tonight, but he's been a nice presence. I think what I like to call him is like Mark Stone light. They sort of play the same way. And it's funny because when he came into the lineup 3 years ago, Michael Madio was just sort of a AHL scorer, sort of sub-in player. And then he goes to Vegas and he becomes like a nice two-way player who's responsible defensively, can jump into your top nine and score at a decent rate because he always had that. And when I watch him out there, he's not the fastest guy, but he's so smart. He's so smart. And I think Tim Stutzla like literally said it today. He said like he jokingly said, but at the same time, he's sort of correct on this one and saying that Michael Amadio has one of the best like defensive sticks in the league, and he utilizes that stick to the best of his abilities. And to make the smart play and the defensive zone and the offensive zone, and doesn't really hurt the team. So yeah, that's what I have to say. Like, I just want to shout him out because he's a new player and everything. And ever since losing a guy like Connor Brown, that's a nice little replacement for him.
Yeah, they've definitely needed a player like Amadio for some time, and I think we're seeing the value so far. Once the offense gets there, I think we're gonna like him even more.
For sure. Okay, let's transition into period three here on game over here. It's getting a little late, at least not for myself, but maybe for you on the East Coast there. So before we head into that, I just want to talk about La Ruche because Game Over is a network that's right now an independent production focused on community inclusion and quality people at the moment. And if you are interested in supporting the Game Over network, we do have a crowdfunding options available. They will be in the description of this episode and all our episodes on YouTube, and you'll find a link to our Patreon page. And we're also working on a page through La Ruche where crowdfunding platforms for companies will be originating in Quebec. So for La Ruche, we're aiming to raise $15,000. And if we hit that goal, we'll gain access to government grants that will also allow us to employ more people going forward. So if you have any ideas of what you'd like to see as giveaways from these crowdfunding efforts, please let us know in the comments or on Twitter, on Instagram, or on our Discord server as well. Let's head into the final segment for what we have to say here tonight on Game Over. And that is, I don't want to talk about Thomas Chabot today. So like not the best, not the worst performance for Thomas Chabot. He's kind of a veteran at this point. I think we forget that Chabot's gonna be 28 in like 3 months. So like he's not a young defenseman anymore. He's established in this league. From your assessment, now that we have a new coach in Travis Green, what is Thomas Chabot at this point of his career for you?
Look, I think I rate Thomas Chabot a lot more than most Sens fans at this point. I thought he was good tonight. I think he has been good for the most part of this season. Again, Thomas Chabot's not somebody you're going to get excellent defensive shutdown play from, but Travis Green has him, on that second power play role. He's got him penalty killing a lot more now, and I think Thomas Chabot generally has been really fine this season. You can sit here and maybe debate the price tag at this point, the $8 million that he's being paid. Is he providing $8 million of value on the ice? No. But yeah, again, you need players like Thomas Chabot to help drive the offense at 5v5 if you're going to be a good hockey team. Simple as. That's really it. Thomas Chabot does that well. He does drive the offense. He pushes the puck up the ice even better than Jake Sanderson does. I know some people don't want to believe that, but he does. Thomas Chabot's a better offensive defenseman than Jake Sanderson still is at this point. Jake Sanderson is the better overall defenseman, absolutely. But Thomas Chabot, what he brings is, puck skills that nobody else on that blue line currently brings. It's even more apparent now that they don't have a puck mover on the left side like Eric Brandstrom. So I think, Chabot for the better part of this year, the defensive issues are still there. They're always going to be there with Thomas Chabot. But, as him and Jensen sort of still try to figure each other out, I'm still willing to give it some time here in the early going, but I've still been generally okay with what I've seen from Shabbat. And you see tonight, even the first like really great game from Nick Jensen. And, I don't think Nick Jensen can sort of jump up and play the way he did tonight if he doesn't have a partner as sort of solid as Thomas Shabbat is. So Thomas Shabbat, still a really good top four defenseman, still a top four defenseman to me that any team in the NHL would want. That's pretty much how I see it.
Nick Jensen outscoring Thomas Shabbat right now. Jensen's got 4 points on the season. Shabbat's got 3. But yeah, like I think it was his game against Montreal. A lot of people were really hard on him because, of course, there was a lot of eyes around the entire country on that game. It was game 2 of the NHL season and the first Saturday as well on Hockey Night in Canada. And he had a tough game. And then ever since, it seems like he's picked it back up a little bit. Shabbat, like I don't think I remember mentioning like early in the season that he is the X factor for this team. But now that I think that Sanderson has reached that next step a little bit, do I think he's going to be an over point per game defenseman? No. But Shabbat can kind of just settle in and be a good like two-way guy. And that's it. Play 21 minutes a night. I know he's playing more right now just because of her injuries, but play 21 minutes a night, be a 50-point defenseman, work on your defensive game. I don't think it's as bad as other people think for Shabbat. And just be a good leader back there. Like you have Sanderson locked up. You don't need to worry about Shabbat playing 23, 24 minutes a night. Thank God, because we had so many years of that with this player, and it maybe it burnt him out a little bit. And he even admitted earlier in I think September at the golf tournament foundation that the Sens always have to kick off the year, and he was talking about how he just didn't feel healthy for the past 2 seasons, and like he hasn't been healthy really whatsoever in the past like 4 seasons. Really, I think he played most of the games in the bubble year, but if I'm not mistaken, I don't think this player has played over 60, 65 games ever since then. And that's a quality player you need in your lineup for all the flack that fans had given him. He's a player you want because he's a leader. He can score. He can defend. Maybe he's not the best out there at it, but he can. And he brings some nice leadership. He's been here for a long time. Like when he
Longest serving
was
Ottawa Senator right now.
exactly like when he was drafted, David Legwand was on the Sens, right? So that gives you a little bit of perspective. Like this guy has been here a long time, and I think we need to keep him. And I don't want to hear any like the trade Shabbat. Like it's not going to
He's not
happen.
going anywhere. If he was going anywhere, Jacob Chikrin would still be on the Ottawa Senators. Thomas Shabbat's not going anywhere. Like that's whether that's a Steve Stais wants to keep him for some of the reasons you said, the leadership, the fact that he's been here. Steve Stais probably knows that he's pretty solid. I don't doubt that some of the Sens internal data guys, Sean Tierney, whoever else is in there, sort of evaluating players. I have no doubt that some of these other guys in the organization see the value that Shabbat brings, and that's why he's still here. Because quite frankly, like I said, Jacob Chikrin would still be an Ottawa Senator, and Thomas Shabbat would be playing elsewhere if they didn't feel that, if they didn't like what Shabbat was bringing to this team still.
Yeah, for sure. Like I think it's important to temper the expectations a little bit. Just take the salary out of it, and you have a good, solid second pair defenseman in there. So I'm just looking at his stats right here. Um, the most amount of games he's ever played in his single career is 71. Now, that was actually the year right before COVID hit, and that he played all the games that year. And then you have 49 in 2021. You have 59 in 2022. You have 68 in 2023, and you have 51 last year, right? And Shabbat was actually like, I think he was pretty solid last year.
Yeah, he was much better after the coaching change.
Yeah. Um, and there was a big difference there for sure. Like, I think this is just a solid like number two, number three defenseman. I would say number two defenseman. Sorry, I just had a little pop up there. Um, a solid number two or three defenseman. Um, And I just want him to be healthy too, right? Because the one thing, if you restrict the minutes back, it kills the chances of maybe him getting injured down the line because he's played so many minutes in the past. We've always just seen this like in past years with the Sens where he'll just randomly like it'll just be a freak play and he'll get injured and he'll be out like a month or two. And we need him on the back end, right? And especially now where if there's one injury that happens, I mean, I know Artem Zub's out of the lineup right now, but if there's one injury that could maybe derail their season because their depth on D, while they're getting by right now, I would be okay with them adding another defenseman there too.
I think we all would, yeah.
Like Tyler Klevin, I know you were talking about him off air being a really like you were impressed by his game tonight, but
Yeah.
like
Him and JBD have been really good together,
it,
surprisingly. I wasn't huge on JBD at all last year, but him
mhm.
and Clevin have been really good in the couple of games they played together here.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, because like I'm sort of in the middle for both of them. I mean, Clevin's played what 15 minutes here looks like per night. That's average third pair minutes. I think he's been a little bit better than JBD. I haven't.
Yeah, 100%, yeah.
I think at this point, JBD like he's not going to score. Um, I think if I had to pick him or Hamonic, been pretty solid. All things considered, like he's had to step up.
Yeah, weirdly, he's been better.
Hmm.
Hamadek, I don't expect it to continue long term. Like, hopefully, when
No.
Zub is back, it means JBD stays in and Hamadek goes out of the lineup at
Hmm.
some point. But I think if you just watch JBD, he's making smarter plays than last year. He just looks a bit better, looks a bit more assured back there. So, but in terms of like their expected goal shares, him and Clevin have been really good in 3 games. It's a very small sample size, but a lot to like there for the Senators. Neither of those guys are going to bring any offense, but if they can just go out there, not get scored on, that's what you want from your third defense pairing.
For sure. And before we transition to our last segment here, we're probably going to have the stream up for 5 to 10 more minutes here, but I just want to talk about our merch right now, um, which we have clothing out and Game Over apparel. It has dropped with 3 unique designs, whether you feel the nostalgic pull of your retro skater design or you want to make a statement with our established design, which is currently on sale right now, I believe, at the moment on our website. Um, it's available right now. So there's apparel available for every single market here on Game Over, and please head to our website if you want to support our conquest and what we're doing here on this network. So I just want to talk about the defense here. And if anyone in the chat has any questions, please feel free to drop them and we will highlight them here in the chat as well. But I just want to run through the defense with you here, Nick. I want to go through, let's say the 6 defensemen. We'll leave out Artem Zub right now. And I want you to give a rating for them. So A plus, best, D minus, or F is the worst. We'll start off with JBD. How is he being so far in his 3 games that he's had to sub in here for you?
Yeah, I'd say B so far. Pretty
Okay.
run of the course. He hasn't made any brutal errors, hasn't blown me away with anything, but fine.
Okay. Tyler Kleban.
I'd say the same thing for Tyler Clevin. I think, I'd like to see him. He rushed the puck a bit more in the Tampa game, tried to get the puck up the ice a bit more, but overall, I think he's doing a good job imposing his physicality, which is exactly what we've wanted to see from him.
Yeah, I think like he's fared well. I think it's sort of still maybe a little bit of a work in progress, but he's there, and I think they've done a good job at developing him. They stuck him in the NCAA for 3 seasons, which I think he needed, especially to develop his puck skills. Because I remember like when we drafted this guy, people did not like it. They did not like the Tyler Clevin pick. Especially when they had so many. And I remember people wanting players like Noel Gundler, Ronnie Hervinen, like those mid-second round picks who might have like decent stats when you look at them, and they might be a little bit smaller and more skilled players. Right now, those players I am not seeing in the NHL, and Tyler Clevin I am. and there's still some leeway to go. He's going to be 23 in January. But he's a young defenseman, and we can't forget that, especially because Jake Sanderson, I think sometimes we just forget that he's like so good, and he just transitioned to the NHL immediately, and it was really good with basically no issues. But with Clevin, there's definitely something to work with. I think one day he can be a quality third pair D. Let's move on. Travis Hamonic.
C plus on Hamannik. He's been
Okay.
better than previous years, but still makes you a little bit terrified with the treatment of the puck like a grenade the odd time. But
Hmm.
he's been fine, which is, I was never a fan prior to this year. I'm still not. I wouldn't call myself a fan of Travis Hamannik, but I've been fine with what he's been doing.
Thomas Chabot.
Let's go C plus on Shabbat. I'd like to see him start to score a bit more.
Hmm.
Maybe stay a bit more head above the water on the defensive end. But I've
He's got
been,
3 points.
yeah, yeah. But I'd like to see just another hit him. I'd like to see him hit another gear.
Okay. Um, we have Nick Jensen, the new acquisition.
I'll go B on Jensen. Jensen's been fine defensively tonight. He had a great game. That I probably he tonight probably moved him from a C plus to a B for
Yeah.
me. He
Oh,
he was great tonight.
the entire 4-on-4 shift. He like, I remember seeing a comment in the summer, defenseman on the ice at times, or even player on the ice, um, like in very small spurts. And so I saw that there where he just took the puck away and made a great play to Giroux.
Yeah, the foot speed is good. It's a good sign for me. I was a little concerned when they brought him in, seeing his age and everything, but he looks to be still fleet of foot at his age, so it's good.
I don't think he picked up a point tonight. Still over a point per game for this player.
Sorry, I think we're having a bit of audio difficulty there.
Jake Sanderson.
There we go.
All right, that's
Uh,
weird.
yeah, Jake Sanderson, he's been awesome. He's been one of the best defensemen in the league all season since the puck dropped. If you were to do a 6 game Norris, I think he's on ballots. If you're basing it off that, let's see if he can continue it. But he's been fantastic.
It's been a treat, like watching him game in, game out. It's just nice to have like a smooth skating puck defenseman out there who you can just rely on, and play 23, 24 minutes and not really have to worry about making a simple mistake at the blue line or turning the puck over. Because this is something maybe I'll get into a little bit later, but I genuinely think that Jake Sanderson is maybe the most well-rounded player the Ottawa Senators have had, if not in a long time ever. And I mean that like he's not the best player, but the most well-rounded in every single category on the ice. So it's going to be awesome to see him go through the motions this year as the true number one defenseman for the Ottawa Senators. But yeah, that's going to be it for tonight, folks. Thank you very much for tuning in here on Game Over. The Ottawa Senators come out with a 4-0 win over the Utah Hockey Club, with their first game of a 3-game road trip in the, I guess not the West Coast, but in the Rocky Mountains and around that area, around the desert. So thank you very much for tuning in, and we will see you again on Friday against Vegas. Tune in for that game, which should be the second game of the road trip. Thank you very much for tuning in, everyone, and good night.
Awesome.
Nice.